Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping straight into Dr. David Bauer's deep dive into the Epistle of James, specifically chapter 1, verses 16 through 21. What we're doing here is taking ancient cosmic theology and slamming it right into the gritty, everyday reality of how you and I actually talk to each other. It's an incredibly profound piece of text, and we're going to break it down to make these complex ideas totally accessible.
Right off the bat, we hit a major human conflict. Is God actually setting you up to fail? You know, that quiet, destructive suspicion that God might secretly be the source of our trials or our temptations. When things go wrong, human nature loves to point the finger upward. We start wondering if God has some kind of ulterior motive or if he's secretly laying traps for us. James realizes that until we absolutely crush this fundamental misunderstanding, we really can't move forward in our spiritual lives or even our relationships.
Here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the danger of deception, the unchanging Father of lights, and what it means to be born through the Word. Then we'll funnel all that down into practical actions, being quick to hear, slow to speak in anger, and finally, receiving the implanted Word.
Starting right off with Section 1, the danger of deception, and questioning God's motives.
James tells his readers point blank, do not be deceived, and he uses this specific Greek word, planeo. Now, planeo isn't just making a tiny mistake like, adding 2 and 2 and getting 5. It implies a deep-seated, active wandering away from the truth. It's a serious error that lies at the very heart of sin. Dr. Bauer points out that this deception goes all the way back to the Garden of Eden. It's that lingering suspicion that God is holding out on us, that he has ulterior motives, and that he isn't actually good. That deception is the root that destroys our ability to handle temptation.
Moving into Section 2, the unchanging Father of lights and God's ultimate goodness. So how exactly do we fix this deception? Well, James brings in a brilliant contrast. Think about the created luminaries, the sun, the moon, the stars. They give us light, sure, but they're constantly shifting, right? They're moving in their courses, casting shifting shadows, getting eclipsed. Now contrast that with God, the creator of those bodies, the Father of lights. Unlike his creation, God is completely invariable. He is perfectly unchanging. There is absolutely no variation or shadow of turning with him. There's not a single speck of turning away in God from his desire to do good for us.
And here is the absolute crucial takeaway. God is completely for us. Every single good and perfect gift comes directly from him. Dr. Bauer emphasizes that God's fundamental posture towards humanity is this overwhelming desire to communicate his light and his goodness. In fact, James argues that even the withholding or removal of a gift is still a perfect gift from God done for our ultimate benefit. He is entirely on our side.
Which brings us to Section 3, born through the Word, the ultimate gift.
If God is always giving good gifts, what's the absolute greatest gift he could give? Look at this linchpin verse from James 1:18. Of his own will he brought us forth by the word of truth. This single sentence right here is the total antidote to that deception we were just talking about. Notice how it starts. Of his own will. This wasn't some accident. God intentionally desired to give us life. And the mechanism he used to do this? The word of truth. This is the gospel message. And it's this powerful, life-producing force that actually generates a brand new birth within us.
Dr. Bauer highlights a massive contrast in James's theology here regarding two very different types of births. First, you have the birth of sin. Its source is just our own human desire. The means is being lured and enticed, and the tragic end result is sin and death. But then, look at the new birth. Its source is God's will. The means is the word of truth, and the result, we become the firstfruits of creation. In the ancient world, firstfruits belonged uniquely to God and served as a guarantee that the rest of the harvest was coming. By giving us this new birth, God is literally placing us at the very center of his plan to restore the entire universe. How cool is that? All right, shifting gears to Section 4, quick to hear, the very first action.
So since we've been newly created by this word of truth, how does that actually practically rewire our everyday communication? Since our very spiritual existence was generated by hearing the word, James lays out this famous triad of actions for our daily behavior. Let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. And he kicks it all off with the absolute imperative to listen.
But what does being quick to hear really mean in the real world? It means eager receptivity. Obviously, we first need to eagerly receive God's word. But crucially, Dr. Bauer points out something huge here. This directly translates to how we hear other people. True listening is constantly getting blocked by our own self-advancement, our obsession with our own concerns, and our own judgmentalism. To be quick to hear means aggressively tearing down those obstacles so we can actually genuinely receive what someone else is saying.
Next up, Section 5, Slow to Speak and Anger, Bridling the Tongue and Temper. The second and third parts of this triad really go after our human instinct to just react forcefully. And I love this ratio, 2 to 1. This isn't just some modern self-help saying. Dr. Bauer notes that Zeno the Stoic, way back in Greco-Roman philosophy, pointed out that humans have 2 ears and 1 mouth. It's literally a biological reminder engineered right into our anatomy that we should be listening twice as much as we speak. It perfectly echoes James's wisdom.
Let's break down exactly what being slow to speak looks like in actual practice. First, limit your amount of speech. Dr. Bauer brings up a profound theological point here. Because God's word is sacred, our human words actually carry a shadow of that sacredness. Speaking too much vulgarizes our speech. Second, deliberate carefully. We have to stop and ask, do my words actually align with the life-giving nature of the word of truth? And third, pause intentionally. We've got to build that habit of hitting the brakes before we speak to completely short-circuit those destructive, angry outbursts.
And this brings up a massive clash of worldviews. Just look at our modern value system today. We totally privilege self-expression, right? Popular psychology often tells us that catharsis, just letting your anger out and venting, is a healthy, necessary release of pressure. But then look at James's ancient wisdom. James insisted human anger is vile and malicious. He flat out writes that the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. You simply cannot advance God's righteous, peaceful cause with violent, angry speech. It just doesn't work.
Finally, we land on Section 6, Receiving the Implanted Word, Putting Off and Putting On. To maintain this new nature, James gives us one last command, that classic rhythm of putting off and putting on. He tells us to put away all filthiness. Now, when we hear the word filth, we usually think of physical dirt or maybe something sensual. But Dr. Bauer explains this is actually an Old Testament cultic term. It refers to moral unfitness. Think about the ancient temple. Being unclean meant you were separated from worship and from the community. James is saying that our angry, malicious attitudes and words are spiritual filth. They make us unfit to worship God, and they destroy our fellowship with others. We literally have to strip these habits off like dirty clothes. So once we take off the old, we have to put on the new. But James leaves us with this incredible paradox. He says we need to receive with meekness the implanted word. Now wait a minute, if it's already implanted in us at the new birth, why do we have to receive it? It's this beautiful tension between the indicative, who we already are, and the imperative, what we are commanded to do. God has already hardwired the word into our very souls. It is our new nature, but we still have to wake up every single day and actively embrace it. We have to consciously choose to let it rule our reactions.
Which brings us to our final thought today. James follows all this up with arguably his most famous line, "Be doers of the word and not hearers only." So let me ask you, are you just letting this information wash over you, or are you actively letting this implanted truth fundamentally rewire the anatomy of your communication? Are you letting it change how quickly you listen, how slowly you speak, and how rarely you let anger win? That is the real challenge of the Father of Lights. Thanks for joining me for this explainer. I want to leave you with this. How can you take this roadmap and apply it to the very next conversation you have today?